I want to introduce Diana Larson, who is an authority on a lot of things. You may have heard of her as retrospectives, and now she has this chartering for starting projects. She consults with leaders and teams to create work processes where innovation, inspiration, and imagination flourish and lead to solid results. This is very important. And with more than 20 years of experience, Diana activates and strengthens her clients' ability to shape environments for productive teams and to thrive in times of change, which is always the case. And she co-authored these 2 books, The Retrospective and The Lift-Off, serves on the Agile Alliance Board of Directors. And remember, Agile Alliance is one of our mothers. And Diana is co-founder and partner in this Future Work Consulting, a firm dedicated, which is one of the few that I've seen such a nice vision, to designing workplaces where everyone at every level can say, I love my work, this is the best job ever. So now I give you Diana.
Thank you. The pipe cleaners are there, and some of you in the back may want to come up and nab some in the front. The pipe cleaners are there because I know how hard it is to sit and listen to somebody talk for a long time. And you know, I'm the kind of person, I'm like the kind of participant nobody wants. Because when I start getting bored in a presentation, I start poking the person next to me, and I get in trouble and stuff. And so it helps me if I have something to do with my hands. You know, it keeps me busy. So if you're one of those people that helps, that's what the pipe cleaners are for. So anybody can use them. We're not using them for anything else special. I heard some people worrying. Okay, can everybody in the back hear me? Yeah, and I will keep talking this loud. Okay. How many of you have been at places where somebody says, can everybody in the back hear me? And everybody in the back will say, and then they start talking. So I'll keep talking like this the whole time. So, but if at some point you can't hear me, please raise a hand or let me know. The stickers are there for everyone to take in there, and I said there are more up here because those are for you to take away, put on something that you look at a lot to remind you of a pleasant lift-off. That comes from the cover of the book, which has some helping some butterflies in their transition from caterpillar in a cocoon. You know, they go through that sort of icky, juicy stage in the cocoon, and then they turn out to be a beautiful butterfly. And, you know, isn't that a lot of what's happening with our projects and our project teams? You know, we have this idea, and we put that together, and that's like kind of the caterpillar. And then you have to kind of go through this pupal stage where everything turns to mush. And then, if things go right, a beautiful butterfly emerges out of that project. And that's what we want to. That's what we want to give the greatest chance to. We really want our deliverables and our projects to lift off in a really beautiful and good way. And Agile chartering is key in that. And so that's what we're going to be talking about this afternoon, this evening. So, take a moment, close your eyes if you're willing, get comfortable in your chair, you know, shake out the stresses of the day, wriggle your shoulders a little bit, and get yourself comfortable, as comfortable as you can get. These are actually pretty good chairs, so. And imagine, and you know, you may or may not have actually had this experience, but imagine yourself, you showed up as a part of a new team. You've got new teammates. You show up, you're introduced to a world, to a room. You're said, you know, here's your station, here's your work, your machine to work on. Here's a task. Get started. And everybody on the team is given assigned a task. And a period of time goes by, and somebody says, well, we should release pretty soon. And so then you try to integrate all those tasks. But nobody ever really had a good sense of what it was we were trying to do together or why you were trying to do it. Imagine yourself in that place. How many of you have had that experience? Yeah, way too many of us. So now, let's imagine again. Imagine that you have been, you're a part of an intact team who have been given a new product to develop. First thing that happens is you're brought together. Your product owner or your product sponsor explains to you how this product is going to benefit your customers, how it's going to change their world for the better, how all of the folks who use your product are going to have better lives. Their workflow is going to be easier. The things they want to accomplish, they're going to be able to accomplish more smoothly. And it's your work that's going to get them there. And this is the way that it's going to help your company thrive. And here are the things that we're going to look for. And then you have a chance to talk to each other about what each of you believes you can contribute to that team, and how you're going to organize your work to get it done. And then you have a chance to kind of look around and say, well, so what's going on in our work environment, in the environment around our team that's going to help us or hinder us? And what can we do to prepare for that? And then you get down to work. And then you look at your backlog. Then you know what's the highest priority things because your product owner's got that ready for you. You begin to work together, continuously integrating right from the beginning. How many of you have had that experience? Yeah, not as many of us. And that's really if you've never been on a team like that, it's an amazing experience. Yeah, I'm saying no, at least one nod. You spend the rest of your work life trying to figure out how to get back to that. And when I just talk about it, I get goosebumps. And I'm in the fortunate position now that's about the only kind of teams I am on. I work with other kind of teams. There are a lot of folks who need help out there. But for the teams that I do work with, that I'm a part of the team and a part of doing the work, I now have the skills and I know how to make sure that we get to have that kind of an experience. That's what we do with the Agile Alliance Board now. That's what we do with a lot of organizations that I'm a part of. Because it makes such a difference in our lives and in the quality of our lives. So that's what I want to talk about. How do we give our teams and our projects the best possible chance at that kind of start? So this is the model for that Ainsley, Denise, my co-author, and I have created. Both of us have been working with project chartering and team chartering. Ainsley is a PMP of the highest order. She was one of the folks who formed the PMI Agile Community of Practice, very knowledgeable, was a project manager at Hewlett-Packard for 20-some years, very, very skilled, and has done a lot of old-style PMI kind of project chartering, which is a different kind of thing that I'll talk about in a minute, and the new style thing that we're talking about now. She's been doing that for quite a long time. I've been working in the area of helping organizations move from one kind of work design, which is an individual contributor work design, to a team-based kind of work design for 25 years. Long before anybody was talking about Agile, I was working with knowledge workers, some technical, some other kinds of knowledge workers, to form these kinds of teams. And what's interesting about that is I didn't go into those organizations and say, now we're gonna make teams. What I did was I went into those organizations with my colleagues, and I would say, we're here to help you design the workflow, the work process design that's right for you. And what we need is for you to bring what you know about the work to redesigning it. And we would give them some general principles about creating quality of work life and the idea of minimizing handoffs and a few things like that. And inevitably, when we were working with knowledge workers, people who use their brains in their work, who create new ideas and new knowledge as part of their work, they created cross-functional, self-organizing, co-located teams. For 25 years. I didn't impose that on them. They created that for themselves. So when I was first introduced to Agile, I just said, gosh, this is what I've seen people create for themselves. This makes sense. Sometimes I kind of wish we could go back to the old days where we had the time for teams to recreate their work design for themselves. Because I think a lot of the difficulty that we have with Agile adoptions is that we say this is how it's going to be instead of asking people to design it for themselves. Anyway, I digress. So every one of those teams that we created in that way started out with a chartering. Wasn't exactly like this one, but it was very similar. And Ainsley and I, both from our two different bases of experience and drawing on the experience of a number of friends, including a very dear friend named Three, which is another whole story in itself, merged what we knew about what worked well and came up with this model. And really looked for a simple way to talk about how do we do the best job of helping teams get started well, helping them with that initial boot camp, kickoff meeting, whatever that might be. And what we came up with was this Agile chartering model, which relies on purpose, alignment, and context. And purpose is there because it's inspiring. We need that. How many of you have read Daniel Pink's work lately about the importance of purpose in people's lives, in people's work lives? Purpose is there because it's what draws us forward. It's what speaks to our heart and brings us forward, and to our minds. What we say is we need to be able to commit to the work and to the people we're doing the work with. We have to feel like what we're doing is worthy work, to be able to show up and really meet our own standards of best every day. So purpose is there for inspiration. Alignment is there for collaboration, right? So that we're all working together, we're all moving in the same direction, and we know how to do that. Purpose gives us a direction. Alignment helps us get behind it and move toward it. And finally, context is what helps us understand the dynamics of the world that we are in. How many of you feel like you live in a simple world now? Where one day is kind of exactly like the day before, one week is just like the week before. You can count on all the activities that you're going to do tomorrow. Nothing will change, right? It's all routine. Anybody live in that kind of world anymore? I don't. I didn't. This morning, I had an idea of what my day was going to be like when I got up this morning, and it turned out to be a very different day. Right? I have that experience frequently, and I think I'm a pretty good predictor. Right? So we live in a world where the context in which we're doing the work is dynamic. It's continually changing. And as a team coming together, we also need to understand those dynamics. So those are the three parts. Purpose for inspiration, alignment for collaboration, and context to help us deal with our dynamic environment. So I'm going to go into each of these a little more deeply. But here's a group of folks talking about their purpose. They're working on that. These actually aren't software folks. These are some folks who do energy efficiency work, also knowledge work, also highly technical, just not software. I've got this slide here because I want to make the point that when we're doing chartering with our teams, there is some preliminary work to do. And that is particularly around purpose. We need our product sponsors, our product owners, our product managers, all of those folks who together have an idea, have got the big idea for having this project to begin with, or for doing this work to begin with. They've got an idea of what they want or how they want it done or something, and they need to get together and clarify that in a kind of a draft kind of way, right? They don't have to nail down all the particulars. They don't have to dot all the I's, but they have to sort of write down what it is, what their current level of understanding is about it, so that they can create a straw document to bring to the team, so that the team can then start chartering. We need that purpose to come from those folks. Now, sometimes I work with teams and nobody's done that for them, and so they kind of have to do the best they can to figure out what the big idea is. But it's better if you could spend the time to do this, so that teams aren't starting from scratch. They're starting from a basis of reacting to something. You know, from all of us, having some kind of boundary object to have the discussion about always makes things go easier, right? So we ask that our product owners provide that. So purpose. Purpose is there for inspiration, to tell us what the significance is of the work that we're doing. Why does it matter? To help to motivate us, like Dan Pink says, and to help us understand how are we going to know if our work is successful, if we're accomplishing what we were supposed to accomplish. What are going to be our kind of iterative indicators of that? That's all a part of purpose. This whole sort of getting our heads wrapped around what is this work we're being asked to do, and why does it matter? Why does it matter to us? Why does it matter to other people? That's a really key thing to know. And so that's what purpose is here to do. It also, we're going to talk about this a little more on Saturday, if any of you are coming on Saturday. It also sort of helps us identify the boundary, right? It's the thing that pulls us together. For those of you who think in terms of some of the physical patterns of complexity, it can be our point attractor. It's the thing that causes us to organize, self-organize around. Right? It's key for that. And it has 3 parts. Now, the title of this talk was about for every venture. And so, for a product team, you would have a product vision. For an organization, you would have an organizational vision, business vision. For an IT group, you might have a service vision. Right? So don't get hung up on the word product there. It's whatever you are, the vision of whatever it is you're trying to deliver. Right? Whatever world you're trying to create. The vision really is about how is the world going to be different as a result of the work we do. And that might be the whole big world, right? Or it might be the world of a particular subset of our customers. But somebody's world is going to change based on the work that we do. And that's what we need to know going in. What is the idea around that? How is the world, somebody's world, going to be better? And our world, hopefully, if we do this work. The mission is more about the work that we're going to do. So what is the work of this particular team to accomplish that? To get to manifest that vision. Now, sometimes there's a one-to-one match there. You've got a vision and you've got one team that's working toward it. That's great. Other times the vision is really bigger than one team can do. So you might have the same vision for a number of different product teams or project teams, right? But each of them has to know what their unique contribution is to that so that they can have a unique and, as far as possible, not overlapping mission. We want to reduce handoffs as much as possible. And so that's a big part of the work, is figuring out how do we really figure out what is the work of each of our teams, even when they're all contributing to the same vision, so that we minimize the number of handoffs and we minimize the amount of dependency. Right, so that's a big question here. And then finally, I did a good job. Sorry. Finally, we have mission tests. And you know, in classical chartering, classical strategic planning, these are called success criteria or key performance indicators or whatever. But Ainsley and I said, we're writing this for Agile people. They have to be tests. Everything in Agile has a test, and this is the test for our mission. Our friend Joshua Karievsky and 3 wrote an article a number of years ago, and they call them management tests. This is how is the organization going to know that we're on the road to achieving our mission? I mean, of course, we're doing demos at the end of every iteration. We're doing those things, but there are probably a little bit bigger things that we could look at. Are we looking at reaching a certain amount of market share? Are we looking to build some kind of internal capacity for our organization? What is it? You know, what are we hoping to concretely get out of doing this mission, right? Doing the work of this mission. Those are mission tests. And those 3 things taken together, the vision of what we're going to build, the mission of how we're going to build it, and the tests of what's it going to look, you know, how are we going to measure it, that gives us our purpose. We don't do a ton of mission tests. As you'll notice as I go through this, I have a affinity for this handy mnemonic device that hangs at the end of our arm, right? As humans, we are very well equipped to remember things that come in 5s that we can tick off on the fingers of one hand. Let's see, there's this, 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 and this. Oh yeah, I can remember that. When there starts being and that, and that, and that, or I have to start going to my other hand or my toes, I lose track, right? That's just kind of a human thing. People will say 7 plus or minus 2, or they'll say even 5 plus or minus 2. I actually think it's 5. It's just 5, maybe 4, but it's 5. So when I'm working with teams to determine what are their mission tests going to be, we usually limit it to about 5, so that people can keep them top of mind. On a daily basis, I can say, you know, is this thing I'm working on, how's that going to affect our market share? You know, maybe it's a tiny way, but if I can identify something that helps me stay connected to my purpose. So product vision, team mission, and mission tests. So we bring a group of people together and we have them work on their mission. The idea on their purpose. And the idea is that the product owners, product manager, product sponsor, whomever that group of folks is, brings it to the team. They have a conversation. Does this sound at all familiar again, right? We have a conversation about what does this mean? Just like we would when we were grooming a backlog or a lot of the other things, talking about story cards. It's a conversation. A point that we make in the book, and it's not because that was a new point to us, it's actually one that's been reflected back to us many times, is it's not about charter. It's about chartering. It's about the conversations. That's what really makes a difference. So we bring the team and those folks who've got this straw document purpose statement together, and they have a conversation. And the team says, well, you know, that mission test feels pretty far out of our control. It seems like a whole lot of other people are going to have to contribute something in order for us to meet that test. Are you going to hold only us to that, or is that more of a test for the product or for the vision? Or, you know, you've got this quality standard in the mission, and we're not so sure that that's the right way to describe that. So there's a back and forth conversation until all the parties can agree, yes, this is what we're committing to. We are committing to this purpose, this vision, this mission, these tests. And that's the work of that part of the meeting, that part of the chartering, is getting to the place where everybody says, I can commit to this. Maybe it's not my favorite version of what I'd like to commit to. Maybe it's not my idea about how this would best go forward, but it's something I can commit to. Right? We could everybody in the team, everybody in the product development line can say, yes, we'll commit to this.
Can I ask questions now?
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
So to be sure I understand, the mission tests are in no sense executable. They are criteria, and is really a judgment as to whether that criterion is met.
Well, what we say is they have to be measurable, but the measure may be a thumb up or thumb down. Did we hit it or didn't we? And we just have that conversation, right? So here's some examples, and this might help. The Raccoon Rescue website project is an interesting one. It actually is a group that we were working with that is we've changed the name a little bit, but they actually do sort of urban wildlife rescue kind of things. And they had been going along as a nonprofit for a while, a big organization. And actually this is the vision of the organization, at least the first part of it, is the vision of their organization. But they decided that they really needed to have a website, right? And they needed to create a project around getting this website built, right? And so this is the purpose for that project team that's going to build the website. So they looked at the first part of the product vision is actually the vision of the organization, but then they added this last bit, the website attracts volunteers and donations, because that's the vision that's specific to this work. Okay. So that's how the world is going to change. Raccoon Rescue's world is going to change because they're going to have donations and volunteers coming into their website that they've not ever had before. And all of that is going to help them in helping the urban wildlife that they deal with. Okay? So that's their vision. Pretty big, pretty hand-wavy, pretty fuzzy, but something that the team of people who care about such things can get behind. The mission is this is how we're going to disseminate information. So this is our information dissemination. We want to attract and register volunteers with this website. We want it to be able to take donations. We want it to be attractive. We want it to be user-friendly because we're trying to attract volunteers, so we don't want to make it hard for them, right? And we want to make this as easy as possible. So there's both some sort of specific, very high-level sense of what needs to be built there, but also qualities of what it needs to be like are both captured in that mission. And then the mission tests, I think they actually have 5, but I've only got 3 of them here. By fourth quarter of 2011, the site would have processed 20 trouble-free donations. We can look at that and we say, did we do it or didn't we? Right?
The 20 is clearly measurable.
Right.
Trouble-free is not so measurable.
Not so measurable. I mean, so it could be they will have processed 50, but only 20 of them will be trouble-free, or who knows, right? But everybody will have to agree on whether it was or wasn't.
Yeah,
Right.
but I don't think the criteria are very clear for what trouble-free means. So.
Right. So more conversation. Right. Right. At some point, they'll have to have that in order to have that up-down vote. By Q1 2012, the pool of volunteers registered through the website will increase by 25%. Brochure requests will go up. Now, this is an example of a mission test. Can you read these in the back? Okay. So I won't read them to you then. But this is an example of one that probably the website team isn't going to be entirely culpable, right? I mean, there's some marketing that has to go on there. There's some graphic design. There's some marketing products. There's some other things that are going to happen to hit this one. And so there has to be an understanding among the whole group that this isn't just the website development team responsible for that. But we are going to need that to really know that our vision is being manifested. Here's another one. This one is actually an IT team. They're an ongoing kind of team. They're not a special project. They have to do with security, enterprise security in their organization, and identity management. So their vision is a streamlined, simplified process for onboarding for all new employees. And I tell you, in this organization, that's a big improvement, a big change the world for the better kind of improvement, because it was kind of a mess. And I mean, it was very bureaucratic. People were having to do a lot of redundant work and stuff just to start doing work in the organization. So these folks were charged with making that better, making that situation better, is the vision. And that particular team, their project that they took on was to do automated account provisioning. So again, at a very high level, just a description of what's the nature of the work. Not how to do it, not how to do the work at all, but what's the nature of it? What's this work going to look like, basically? And then they have some tests. Yeah.
Even though this is like a deep layer, it's still called product vision.
Yes, because it's what they're producing. Right. It could be service vision. It could be. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. He just asked. He said that the team really wasn't doing a product, but I still was calling it a product vision. And yeah, just for simplicity's sake. Yeah. This one was kind of interesting. The mission test that they came up with here about having at least 2 brown bag sessions, that really was to measure, are we talking to the people who are affected by this, right? And they thought about doing kind of a customer satisfaction survey or something, and they said, nah, it'd be better if we just measure, are we talking to them? Why, in order to build this thing, are we reaching out and talking to them ahead of time, not waiting until afterwards and measuring their satisfaction. That was a judgment call they made. Yeah. So that's purpose. Any other questions about purpose before we move on? Yeah.
This is mission test again.
Yeah, okay.
So the last bullet says we'll have held at least 2 brown bag sessions with application developers.
Yeah.
Holding the sessions is something the team can control. Whether or not application stakeholders attend or participate or gain anything from it is something that the team may not be able to control, but it's clearly more important. I mean, if they hold brown bag sessions and nobody comes, they held the sessions, but they were useless.
Right, right. Well, so the with application stakeholders is an important part of that. And what it says is the work isn't just scheduling and getting a room for the brown bag. The work is going out and doing the influencing and persuading work to get people to show up. So, and the team knew they needed to do that as well, with the help of their product owner. I mean, in these teams, I think of the product owner as part of the team. Right? Yeah.
How does this aspect of chartering differ from a standard EMP project charter?
Because it's lighter weight. We aren't doing the business case analysis. That's already been done. This actually kicks in after that PMI charter has happened. After the decision to do the project has already been made. We already know we're going to do it. We've gotten all the sign-offs. Now it's about how do we help the team get down to work. And that's the big difference. Okay, alignment. Alignment is about really creating that unification, that commonality of working together as we move forward. So alignment is much more in this sense about the team and how the team is going to do its work together. So we want to begin by, it's a way of beginning that process of building trust, or if it's an intact team, sustaining the trust that's been built, or maybe repairing trust that's been broken. It's about creating that way, that field for people within which they can collaborate. About engineering things so that it's easy for people to collaborate. And so that it's easy for people to make a commitment to each other. Purpose is about committing to the work. Alignment is about committing to each other and to do the work together. So alignment also has 3 parts. Values and principles. We talk a lot in the book about values and principles. Since the book came out, or right about the time the book was coming out, I started running into more and more information about the role of simple rules in self-organizing systems. You have a great example of that, kind of homegrown at MIT here. The group of engineers there wrote a computer simulation program called Boids. Have any of you seen it? It simulates flocking behavior. Flocking, swarming, herding, schooling for fish. Those are all the similar kinds of behavior. And they're actually the way that the individuals in those groups are able to do what they do and create what they create together is because they all follow the same, what the complexity theorists call simple rules. Keep going in the same direction as the rest of the flock, fly toward the center, avoid hitting any other members of the flock, and avoid predators. Last one's key. So you might run into that idea that values and principles or simple rules are kind of the same. The idea is, what are those kind of guiding thoughts about how we work together that is going to help us make decisions? You know, do we strive for quality? Is that our simple rule? And if so, how does that impact the decisions we might make? Or is our simple rules getting it into the hands of the customers as fast as possible? Or is our simple rule maximize organizational profit? Right? Depending on what your what your local rule is, you might have very different decisions and very different behavior. It doesn't really matter. I'm not going to put a value judgment on what your simple rules are. The idea is just to make them explicit. Because every group has simple rules. It's not always made explicit. Right? Every group has values and principles that guide their behavior, but they're not always made explicit. And things go better in U.S. business culture. Things go better when they're explicit. So we want to bring those out. And I have some examples of those. Yeah.
Would they be same like policy, Kanban or something?
Ask that question in a minute after I show you some examples, because I don't think so, but maybe. Yeah. Core team is about who's on the team and why. So there's a lot of different things we might do here. I'll show you some examples of things, but it's basically what are each of us going to contribute to the team? Why are we here? What skills do we bring? What background? What knowledge? How is my presence on this team going to help the rest of you get the work done? It's having that conversation, just knowing who's present and why. And then once we have that sense, this is a time when we might do personality or work styles kind of instrumented. A lot of people like those. Just getting to know each other. Particularly if it's a new team, it's important to spend quite a bit of time on this. If it's an intact team, you may just want to update each other. Right? This is what my life is like now. Or this is how I'm thinking about this particular piece of work. How I think I'll contribute to that. And then finally, working agreements are the more daily, kind of mundane, routine, these are going to be our core hours. It's more tactical, whereas the values and principles or simple rules are at a much higher level, kind of decision guiding. These are behavior guiding, those are more decisions. Yeah.
I guess my question is under the working agreements, are those wouldn't all be decided by the team, right? Dictated based on geography or time?
Well, again, for both values and principles and working agreements, I've got my mnemonic device, and I'm only going to have 5. I'm going to have no more than 5. And so these really are for the team to get its own work done. We will get to those other kinds of policy things and stuff that we might have to pay attention to, but this is for the team. Here's a group of people who are working on, this is actually an example of one example. I'm going to show you another one. In a couple of instances, organizations have said, we're going to be spinning up a whole bunch of new teams at the same time. Maybe they've just done an Agile adoption, or they've done some other kind of change initiative in their organization. They reorganize the teams. And they have a whole bunch of teams that need to get their chartering done at the same time. So what we do is we just put all the teams in a big room, and we all go through it together. So we spend an hour and a half or 2 hours on purpose, and then we do what one organization I work with is an educational evaluation organization, and I started calling it gallery walk. They said, no, it's a science fair. So what happens is each team, figures out their purpose, writes it up on a flip chart, and then everybody goes around and visits everybody else's and sees what all the other teams are doing, and particularly visits those teams that they think that their work most closely aligns with, or if they do have some dependencies, no matter how much we've tried to avoid it, there may still be some. So they particularly need to visit those teams to make sure that they're kind of clean in those overlaps. And then they come back together and they talk about how they might want to change their purpose, and then they work on alignment. And at this point, this group is working on their working agreements. And then we do another science fair, and everybody goes look at everybody else's, and then we come back to the same table and decide. It's actually a lot of fun. We've done it with 8 teams in a room. We've done it with 11 teams in a room. The biggest group I've done it with so far was 15. So I don't know if we could get bigger than that, but. So here's the Raccoon Rescue website project again. Here are their values and principles. We actually ended up writing these principles as if they're simple rules. There's a very particular way that you write simple rules. We got it in the book. They all start with a verb. They're scalable, generalizable, etc. But this group wanted to start with figuring out what were their values and write their principles or simple rules from there. So that's what they did. Their core team discussion was about what skill sets do we need? Do we have all the skill sets that we need present on the team already? Or is there anybody else we need to go out and gather in? This was a combination. It was an interesting team because it was a combination of existing staff people for the nonprofit, paid folks who were going to come in to work on this project as contractors, and volunteers. So this was particularly important that they get all this part figured out. What all skills did they need? Did they have them? Who did they need to recruit? And so on.
Diana,
Yeah.
can I raise a question?
Sure.
What happens when you work on an Agile team
Yeah.
for 2 or 3 years, you have the same people,
Right.
and you double your staff,
Right.
and say half of these people you just hired don't have Agile experience?
Right. Well, so this is one of the places where you have that conversation about what it's going to be like working on this team. I mean, assuming you've already decided that they're going to have to figure out how to work the way you work. You're not going to go back to working the way they work, right? So this is part of that is having this conversation. Again, it's not about the charter. It's not about getting this written down. It's about the conversations we have to get here. That's the really valuable part. Because chartering, there's a reason we call it chartering. And that's because we are never done with it. We're always in draft with our charter. The charter that we are currently working from is just the current charter, the reflection of the current understandings, and it can be changed anytime our understandings change. All the way up until we deliver the product. At that point, we know what the charter was. Right? At that point, it's finished. So it's about having these conversations over and over and over again. And these conversations, the alignment conversations, happen a lot in retrospectives. Because that's a lot about where we talk about how we're working together. Right? So this is the first place you have that conversation, and then you keep having it. And in working agreements, again, you can see the difference between the values and principles and the working agreements. They're much more about kind of daily basis. What are we doing? How are we doing things differently? A lot of people will put, if they've got core hours, they got kind of flexible work time, and they've got core hours, they'll put their core hours in their working agreement until everybody kind of gets used to that. Sometimes people have had a really bad experience on another team where nobody ever showed up on time to meetings, so they'll put in a working agreement about meeting attendance or something like that. Yeah.
These slides are available.
I can make them available. Yeah. Yeah.
Dave.
Oh, Bobby.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. With respect to the values and principles, it's a little unclear to me whether those are the values and principles of the overall nonprofit organization, or whether they're the values and principles of the web development team, or a mixture.
This team decided that these are the values and principles of the organization, and the team decided that they were just going to adopt them, that they were a good fit for the work they were doing. That doesn't always happen. You want to make sure that you're not setting your team up with values that are completely contrary to your overall organization. I mean, you want them to at least have some consistency, but they don't have to be identical. In this case, they were. It's a small nonprofit, right? In this case, they weren't. This IT department has a set of values that they go by that isn't this set. This is what the team decided they needed. And again, this is that identity management security group. And so they decided they needed 2 principles, 2 simple rules around reliability, because that was really paramount for them. I find writing working agreements, I find it's a handy technique to start out with this, we work best together with. That somehow gets people in the right mindset for writing the rest of the working agreements. So here's an example of some values and working agreements that a team came up with. They didn't do the principles or the simple rules. They just did values and then working agreements to match each of their values. And so this picture I took, it's hanging in their team room 18 months after we wrote this. They were still referring to them. And they never made them any prettier than this. I mean, this is, it's, you know, it doesn't, you don't have to, right? It could just, you do it simple. You do post-notes and tape and, you know, you just get it up there. It's not about crafting this beautiful document. It's about having the conversations and getting the common understanding. Yeah.
Have you had occasions when, because of retrospectives, you had to change this stuff?
Absolutely. And that often is the time when the charter changes. When we decide that this draft charter isn't quite fitting the bill, we need to make, something has happened, we have a new understanding, maybe even about the mission. One of the things that we notice is that the purpose tends to change the least. Alignment is pretty stable, but it will change. Context, when we get to that, changes a lot. Within purpose, vision tends to stay pretty much the same. Mission will sometimes morph as we learn new stuff and new understandings of what our customers really need emerge. And mission tests change the most, because sometimes we accomplish some of them and we want to take those out and put in new tests, right? In alignment, the values tend to stay the same. The core team can change. Sometimes we lose members, get new members, we may need to add more folks. And the working agreements are the most dynamic. They change the most, and it usually happens in a retrospective or sometime like that. You know, we have this working agreement about casting no silent vetoes and speaking up. You know, I think we're all speaking up now. There's no shrinking violets on our team anymore. Everybody's pretty much, so we can, I think we could lose that one and put something else in its place that we really need a reminder of. And that's the kind of conversation that comes up in a retrospective. If it doesn't, you might want to say, we're going to look at our current draft charter every so often, every quarter, every 4 months, something, every release. Different teams pick different cadences for that, but there is a formal agreement that at some point we're going to look at our charter, make sure it still represents our understanding of what's going on, and change it if it doesn't. But everybody has to be involved in that conversation. It can't be done unilaterally.
So if the group agreed, thank you. If the group agreed that they were going to re-examine the charter, say, every 3 months,
Yeah.
and 1 month into that period there were significant changes in the team, would you reopen it?
Yeah, yeah.
Do it all over again?
Right,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, you know, it's we have this regular cadence unless something else happens. Okay, so here's another way of doing the core team. With a lot of teams, we do something called personal posters, and I've heard this referred to as team shields, or it has a lot of names, like a lot of the activities that we do with teams do. But this is, we asked everybody on the team to make a poster on a flip chart, just with some markers and stuff. Sometimes we give you stickers or magazines to cut out, but you know, you don't really need that. Put the name on it, make 4 quadrants of some kind of shield-shaped thing, and in those 4 quadrants are, here's what I believe I'm bringing to the team, what I plan to contribute, my strengths, however you want to frame that, my gifts. In this quadrant, and this is the areas that I need help, or this is the areas that I need people to understand in order to work best with me, or something like that. This is what I want to get from being in this team, the what's in it for me. Our friend David Schmaltz talks about everyone should have their project within the project, helps keep people engaged. So it's useful to identify, from every team member, what is it you're hoping to get from your participation in this team? Maybe it's a cool new technology, and I just really want to, get clearer about how to work in this cool new technology. Or maybe I really want the opportunity to work more closely with a product owner because I'd really like to understand that product development mindset better. Or maybe it's, gosh, I've always just wanted to work with these two people and they're on the team and I'm just really hoping to get to work with them a lot. It doesn't matter, but everybody needs to have a reason for being on the team. More than just what their kid, it has to be what are they going to get back. So that's the what's in it for me. In the volunteer world, we call that the WIFM, the W-I-I-F-M, what's in it for me. Right? And then this last part of the shield, we reserve for what we call laters. Later, right? Laters. And this is, for new teams, especially important. It's the stuff people get to learn about you after you've had a couple of glasses of wine, or usually after you've gotten to know each other. Not deepest, darkest secrets, but just something about you outside of work that makes you a unique and wonderful person, right? Could be, I coach my kids, or I spend every weekend driving to gymnastic tournaments, or I'm a big fan of some team, or I have a hobby, or, it could be anything. But just that helps the other people on the team know a little more about you. And it's amazing what that does to help a team bond. My own personal theory is that it comes out of the psychological work on individuation and de-individuation. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that work, but knowing that little bit more about someone allows me to think of them as another person that I have a connection to, as opposed to just another one of my team members, or just another developer. It takes the label off and makes them a real human being. So this is another tool you can use for doing that. Doing work style instruments together, that can really help with that. This is the core team part of alignment is sort of insert your favorite team building activity here. Right? Yeah.
So this coming from a corporate background now, there's challenges of getting buy-in and whatnot.
Right.
Do people kind of, it's difficult for people to maybe expose themselves at this level, but
Right.
does this just naturally happen as a result of people going through all the previous steps to get here? Or do you find that there are tricks you have to do to sell people and get them more bought in?
Well, what I have discovered is that having the purpose conversation goes a long way toward getting people ready to do this. If we've all had that conversation about purpose, and we've bought into that, we've all said, yes, we commit to this, that goes a long way. And then we have this discussion about values and what are kind of those guiding rules that we're going to use when we've got decisions to make and we can't bring the whole team together, but one of us needs to make some decision on behalf of the team. How do we know that person's going to make a decision that we're all going to be in agreement with? Well, they have to refer to our values and principles in their decision making, right? By the time you've been through all of that, this starts being like kind of a piece of cake, right? And then working agreements, and there's no particular order. So if doing values and principles and then working agreements and then this work better for a group, you can do that. Okay, we're good. Starting to run out of time, so I want to get through this next bit. The next bit is context. And remember I said context is the piece that's dynamic. And it's because context is about helping us see the whole system. right? We are a team that is a system, but we exist in a greater whole, in a bigger system. And we need to understand that relationship of our team to our context. And so it helps us to do that. And then it helps us understand how we fit. You know, what puzzle piece are we? You know, do we fill in the clouds or the little river or the water wheel, or, you know, what part of the puzzle are we in terms of our organization? Where do we fit? And also helps us to recognize risk. And I think this is a really interesting piece. And Ainsley and I had a lot of conversations about this, that in most organizations, it's the project manager has all the responsibility for risk. Mitigating risk, understanding risk, doing risk analysis. And that doesn't make any sense to us. The team should have a role to play in that. The team should have a chance to understand what's risky and what might be the consequences of that. And because they may have some good ideas about mitigating risk, right? These are smart people. So context is also about recognizing risk. And the way we do that is the three pieces here, again, boundaries and interactions. What's the boundary around our team? What's in and what's out? And what are the interactions that go across that boundary? Right? Who is it that we are regularly going to need to be communicating with or receiving things from, so on. Committed resources. What do we think we're going to need? Not humans, but other, because we talked about that in core team and in interactions. But other kinds of resources. Equipment, training, space, you know, whatever it might be. What is it that we need to get our work done? Access to tools, access to information. What do we really need to get our work done? And do we have everything we need to begin with? So many teams I know start without adequate build servers. Right? Yes?
Can I ask another question?
Sure.
When you talk about what you need, what... You talk about what you need and what resources you have at the present time and what you need in the future. Well, sometimes that's not, well, how do you say, you know, that's not in your control.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. That's right.
So the budget's not really in control
That's
as
right.
an individual.
Right. Right. So what we do here is we have the conversation
Right,
about
with the
what,
individuals and the project lead.
given what we know now, which is inadequate,
Right.
but it's what we know, right?
Vague. Yeah.
Given what we know now,
Right.
what is it that we believe we're going to need? How much of that do we have? How much of that don't we have? If we, for whatever we don't have, what's the process of getting it? You know, how do we need to participate in that? It's that conversation, right? So, because there may be things that the rest of the organization is perfectly willing to contribute, but just had overlooked, hadn't thought about, that the team recognizes.
Right.
So it's again, it's that give and take conversation about that.
Give and take with the budget.
And with the budget.
Right.
Yeah, with a lot of things. And so that the team also then can understand any trade-offs that have to happen there.
Okay.
You know, or reasons behind why the build server isn't on site right now. Right?
Right.
Yeah. And then finally, the last part of context is this idea of what we call a perspective analysis, which is giving the team an opportunity to look out just a little bit into the future, usually only maybe 3 months or so, and have a conversation about what do we see sort of coming our way? What do we need to be aware of? Both opportunities and threats. And, you know, what is it that we want to do about that? Here's another picture of one of those events where a whole bunch of teams are chartering at the same time. They're having a great time. And out of that came this. Actually, it was one of those teams that created this as their boundaries and interactions model. Now, a lot of folks, as you'll see on the next slide, don't go the extra mile of making a PowerPoint or a Visio out of it. This team decided they really wanted to do that. So they were an accounts payable billing team, and they were looking at what's in our team, what's outside our team, and then they used these arrows to say, are we getting something from them? And they talked about what's the nature of what we're getting from them, and what do they need from us? And where was it a two-way street? Where was it a one-way street? It was a really interesting conversation. And another team did it this way. And this is what they had up on their wall, and then what stayed on their wall. And they used various shapes of sticky notes. Their team is the flower here in the middle. And just all clusters of their external folks and internal folks. So it doesn't have to be fancy, right? It's about the conversation and putting those sticky notes up and moving them around and, well, which way should this arrow be going anyway, right? That's the real value in this. That's where the richness lies. Here's an example. I don't have a really good example of the resource conversation, so I apologize. I'm still looking for that. But here's an example of one way of doing a prospective analysis. And this is actually the prospective analysis that Ainsley and I did for writing the book, where we have probability, how likely is it to happen, and impact. And this goes from a negative to a 0 to a positive. So we were looking at, is it a beneficial impact or a detrimental impact? Will it help us or hurt us? And how likely is it to happen? Right? Because things that fall in here, maybe there's something, if it's a good thing, maybe there's something we can do to help it along. If it's not such a great thing, maybe there's something we can do to hold it off. Right? So down here in the won't happen, but would really kill the book writing project is Diana and Ainsley's friendship becomes a risk. Right? That would have killed the book writing project, but we didn't think it was going to happen. Right? So it's way down here. And we also put down here, we discovered the idea just won't pan out.
What's the one that actually on?
That one up there is 3 gives it his all, which Ellen will understand. But it's our friend 3, and who's done a lot of work with chartering. We really wanted him to be on board with it. So, and he was in the end. So.
Would you say this was called prospective chart?
We call it a prospective analysis chart. There are another number of ways that you could accomplish the same kind of prospective analysis. Agile talks about effects mapping for your project. I think that's another, it really is a way of kind of deeply understanding the customer's relationship with the project and some of the things you're going to need to know and where you need to get more information, where you're lacking information. I think that would be another really good tool to use here. Anything that helps the team sort of look outside its immediate work bubble. Pardon? Oh, the tool, the effects map. Agile talks about effects mapping as a tool. And if you Google it, Jim Shore's written about it, Goiko's written about it. It's out there. Yeah.
Is this different from just a qualitative risk analysis?
The only way that it's different is that it's with the whole team doing it. It's not just a one project manager going off and doing it. It's a whole team. It's a whole team activity. Everybody sits with a pile of Post-it notes, thinks up all the things that they can imagine that might happen in the next 3 months, and slaps them up there. Or maybe they do it in pairs, depending on the size of the team. Yeah, it's not brand new. I mean, where you can leverage existing things to accomplish your purpose, you do that, right?
Question?
Yeah.
So, 2-part question. I can totally see the value of the chartering and getting the team to discuss amongst itself, who wants to get what for themselves out of the whole project and everything.
Right.
Because I've been on teams where they didn't do this and I saw how badly things went.
Yeah.
So, 2-part question. One is, do you have any advice about how to motivate a team to buy into doing this? Because it's a lot of effort. And I'm also wondering, realistically speaking, over what time span do you accomplish all this? I guess that was the second part of the question.
Okay,
Yes.
cool. I'm going to go just to the last, or the next to the last slide to do this. So where I have found that it works best is where we don't engage in any convincing activities. We just say, this is a part of our team life cycle, and we're going to start with this. And it's amazing, you know, how if you just sort of put your stake in the ground, people go, oh, okay, right? And the key is that you don't spend a lot of time on it. We have done this a couple of different ways. We have done it with, like I described, everybody in the room usually takes at least a day, about a day, to get an adequate first draft. But no more than that. And then after that, it's a matter of iterating and improving it. Because you're not done with it, right? You're never done with it until you've delivered the product.
Are you saying one day to do all of those pieces?
Yeah. Because you're just getting everybody's first sense of it, right? You don't. It's intended to be lightweight. It's intended to work in an Agile context. So yeah, you just time box each chunk, get as much done as you can on it, and move on to the next chunk. And if you don't get it all done, that's okay, because you're going to come back to it, and you're going to revise that bit anyway. You're going to learn some stuff, and you'll know it's going to be different. So we actually did values and principles for Agile chartering as a part of the book. And one of our values was good enough, and principle was good enough for now, right? We don't strive for perfection, ever. We just get it far enough along that we've had enough conversation that we have a pretty good common understanding and we can move on. Because we know it's not ever going to be accurate until the day we're done with the project anyway, right? Just like so much else. So we're going to iterate on it. And maybe not every iteration, you know, every build iteration, maybe we're not going to be looking at it. But we're going to look at it on some regularity, and we're going to make improvements to it. And that's just how it's going to work. And maybe, you know, one time we look at the purpose and say, is this still our mission? Are these still the right mission tests? And then maybe the next time we're looking at, are these still the right working agreements? And another time we're looking at, well, gosh, 3 months has passed since we did our last prospective analysis. Should we take a look out another 3 months ahead? Right? And it just keeps us in that conversation. So it's chartering. It's not the charter. Can't say that enough. It's chartering, it's not the charter. Right? We just get that good first pass. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, well, I'm 3 minutes from my time, so I'm going to do one more thing and then I'll come back to you. So, okay, so there's the book. It's available over there. It's available on Amazon. And if you want an electronic version, it's better to go to the publisher. They have a Mobi version and a PDF and all that stuff, so you can get that from them. It's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and all those places, so all the standard go-to places. And David, your last question.
I'm wondering how, any thoughts you have about applying this to teams made of unpaid, volunteer, part-time people. For example, in fact, town government, where people are on a committee that they're appointed to, they don't have any space of their own, and they don't have any walls that belong to them. They meet, say, 2 hours a month or something. Would this be applicable?
I apply it to every team I'm on. And I'm in a lot of volunteer organizations. So Agile Open Northwest has a charter. Agile PDX, our local user group, we've been through this whole thing, and much of it is on the agilepdx.org website. Not the context, but the other things. Yes, I mean, in Agile Alliance, we do it a little bit differently, but every program that is proposed for the Agile Alliance has to come up with a charter. that has some points that are very much like this. Not exactly the same, but they have to submit that to the Agile Alliance Board in order to get their program approved.
I guess it seems to me
Yeah.
that if the group
Yeah,
has 2 hours to work together once a month,
right,
and you said this takes a day,
right.
that would turn out to be 4 months.
Right, right, right. Well, and if, you know, I would really look at, is it possible for everybody to make a commitment to do this, to get together to do this? In my own organization, FutureWorks Consulting, we have a small team of people, with a couple of partners, some other folks who work for us and with us. We brought that whole group together. First, my partner and I, Sharon, sat down and we did a draft purpose. Then we brought the whole team together. The whole team looked at, massaged, ratified the purpose. They actually changed some of the work, the mission tests, and changed actually some wording in the mission that improved it. Then we all worked on the alignment pieces, and we all began work on the boundaries and interactions, and we were now able to finish. So we scheduled another day to work on the committed resources and the what I forgot to mention before is another way that we've done this in organizations is bring a team together for an afternoon to work on purpose, and then another afternoon to work on alignment, and another afternoon to work on, or part of an afternoon to work on context. The teams that had experienced it both ways said they liked the one day better. So, you know, I just look at the teams that I am choosing to be on, and I say, you know, are people willing at some point early on, even though we know in an ongoing way we're only going to be able to meet once a month, are we able to commit the time to do this so that we all know what page we're starting from? And if nobody wants to do it and everybody just wants to do tasks, then I get to choose, you know, change your organization or change your organization, right? I get to decide if I want to be a part of that group. With volunteer, people vote with their feet. Right. Yeah. You're welcome. So if you want to know more about, I've got books up here that you can look through so that you know you can see if this is something that's interesting to you. I've got stickers up here that you can just come and take. I heart Agile chartering is one of my favorites. And thank you all for coming. We're good. We have networking, so if you have any questions, feel free to come up and ask me questions after.
So, Diana, are these books for sale? Some people want to buy them, they can? Okay. And will you sign them for them?
I will sign them.
Okay.
How
much is a book?
The list price on these books is $30. Author price here is $20.
Okay.
Because I don't have change.
Okay.